beautiful minds, welcome to my channel. I am Saika, and today I'd like to share with you what my relationships were like when I was fat. So as you guys know, I've always been fat ever since I was a child. Therefore, all the relationships I built were built during the time that I was still in a bigger body. For today's videos, I'd like to share with you guys what my relationships were like. Not just the romantic ones, but as you guys know, as social beings, we make connections not just with potential lovers, but with the people around us that eventually become our friends, our acquaintances, and of course, coming from our families, and also the very important one, our own selves. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 1. Random people and acquaintances. Contrary to popular belief, I wasn't really that ostracized or bullied because of my weight. There were comments here and there, but not so grave that it had like a huge impact on my self-esteem and self-image, especially coming from other people or people I barely know. When I watch or when I hear fat people and how they're treated in different countries, I can't really relate because it really doesn't happen to me. I've never personally experienced being like called out all the time on the streets and whatnot. Generally, when it came to random people, aka the service people or the people I just bump into when social distancing still wasn't a thing, people were generally nice to me. Maybe it's because it's part of their job or maybe it's just a cultural thing, but I never felt like I was treated differently, and sometimes I even felt treated preferentially. So for example, when I used to go thrift shopping and like I could haggle down prices and it would be fine. I could do it just like how other people would do it. I could still do it. And sometimes a lot of the people in the cashier or whatever, they would give me discounts because some of them would comment that, oh, you look so cute. So maybe it has something to do with personality and how I approach them as well. So there's also that. So they gave me a lot of discounts and thank you for the discounts. So I'm happy. They think I'm cute in my chubbiness, so that also worked in my favor in a way. In terms of my mentors, like my teachers or my professors, I've always been beloved by them. They always treated me well because I was a grade A student, number 1. Number 2, I loved helping out in class, so they could really count on me and they would always, you know, put me in different competitions and the like. So I was quite treated preferentially by my professors and teachers, but it wasn't really a weight issue. It was more of because I was good in academics or in academia. Even in terms of employment, I've never worked, but I did intern and I really got into the places or the companies I wanted to intern, and they gave me roles that were fit for my skills and abilities and not just because of the limitations of my weight. The only time I could remember being called a fatty on the street was when I was 10 or 11 and I was jogging in our village, and some construction worker guy who was passing by was like,
"That's good that you're exercising, fatty."
But you know, I was still a child. I felt a bit offended and embarrassed, but aside from that, nothing ever happened. After that, no one ever commented that way to me again. And just to say, generally these kinds of people, like construction workers or men who work in that kind of industry, in my experience, they are the ones who always catcall me, catcall other women. So I was even catcalled when I was fat, so there's also that. They're just generally rude. Aside from that, I've never heard a bad comment from a random person that I bumped into or an acquaintance regarding my weight. Number 2. Romantic prospects. I'm just gonna say it point blank, I've never had a boyfriend and I've never been in a romantic relationship. With that being said, it doesn't mean that I've never been asked out. So most of the asking out happened in high school, where the hormones were probably at its peak. So yeah. Before moving to my other high school, there were 2 guys who asked me out in my previous school. So the first one asked me out through Facebook Messenger, which you should never do. And the second guy actually made me a cake. He made me a chocolate cake, which was my favorite cake, and I told him about it. So he made me one before I left. So that was really sweet, but nothing ever really came out of that. In high school, in my new school, there were guys who asked me out. I received flowers during Valentine's Day, even during junior, senior prom. A few guys did attempt to ask me out, but I always ended up just going with my friends. And even outside of these occasions, someone took me to the back of our school church and played me an Ed Sheeran song, which was kind of awkward. But what I'm trying to say is that this previous fatty wasn't zero on the dudes. In college, I was just too focused in school and I didn't really open myself to opportunities where I could meet different people and potentially date someone. In terms of what kind of boys asked me out, especially in high school, they were usually the nerdy gamer types, and I saw them more as friends, and also because they weren't particularly my type. I ultimately never went out with anyone because one, if you watched my previous video, and you should, I was stuck on this guy for 17 or so years. Two, I had my own insecurities bodily wise, and I do have severe trust issues and all that kind of stuff, so there's also that. And three, I was just really focused on school and achieving all these achievements and whatnot, or recognition, and I didn't want any unnecessary distractions. So there you go. Number 3, friends. In terms of friends, you usually gravitate towards the people who have similar interests as you. And so for me, most of my friends were the smart, responsible types of people. In grade school, our batch was segmented into like the highest ranking up to the lowest ranking person in terms of academics. So we had like a first section or like a star section, and then we had the last section. On a side note, I really don't recommend this kind of system because, you know, it's kind of harsh. I was always part of the star section, and therefore most of the people in the star section were my classmates since first grade up to our elementary graduation. So obviously they were also my clique. In high school and college, we didn't have that kind of system or arrangement, so it was sort of mixed. But still, I gravitated towards the people who were high achieving, or in a way do-gooder types. Oh, they're gonna hate me for saying that, but it's true. You know, they're the responsible ones. They're the ones you could always rely on. They're the leaders in their own way. Not that I didn't have quiet friends. There were also those kinds of people, but more or less, they're the people that you can really rely and trust to do the work. And just to say, we weren't the stereotypical nerds that were at the bottom of the food chain usually in high school. My close friends were also not all women. They were also guys and gays. For the most part, we were in a mixed weight group. A lot of my friends were on the thinner side. Some are also on the chubby side. I'm obviously part of the chubby side as well. So yeah, there was no discrimination in weight, in gender, and the like. It was a pretty good mix. Contrary to what people usually think of as being chubby and being bullied, especially in high school, I was quite the opposite. I was quite a high achiever with my friends who were very supportive and who were also high achievers in their own right. And I was also very active in performing, in class and on stage. I didn't really give a flying frick if I was chubby or not. Number 4. Family. So the closer you are to the people around you, the more that they're open to actually voicing out their opinions toward you. Don't get me wrong, I'm very loved by my family, and I do not question that at all. I love them with my whole heart and my whole being. But they could be very transparent and very like straight to the point with what they want to say. And this applies to most parents, I guess. They really have no filter. My mom especially is very brutal. The first time I've ever associated my weight with a negative connotation was when I was around 5 years old, and my mom told me I looked like one of those blue and white oriental vases that we used to have in our house. She'd say that I looked like that vase, like I was that fat. And she would laugh at me, even though she thought it was a joke. I feel like I didn't take it as a joke. And that also fueled my emotional eating. Up until now, my mom is the biggest commentator when it comes to our weight, not just for me, but for my sisters as well. She just says it as it is to everyone, regardless of how you would end up feeling about it. Even now that I'm thinner, she always has something to say. When it comes to my dad, he doesn't really comment unless he thinks it's dire and it needs to be said. So God bless him for that. When he called me out on my weight, that was another wake-up call for me to actually start my weight loss journey. He and I are obviously quite close, and most of my hobbies are also my dad's hobbies. That's why. With my 2 older sisters, my first sister had always been the pretty one. and she was always thin, especially in her teenage years. So my mom would used to compare me to her. As for my second sister, there were times in her life that she was fatter or chubbier, but not to my extent. So I could relate to her a lot. We are very close. She's my closest sister. And once she started losing the weight in her 20s, she would try to compel me to join her, but she would never force it on me. So she would just slowly try to incorporate it. But sometimes I do still feel triggered, especially when we would go out. This was before, okay? We would go out and then she would pass on the dessert or not eat as much. And I would get triggered by those little things. It triggered me because, oh my god, I shouldn't be eating it just like her, but I'm still eating it. And I end up eating it because I'm emotional about it. When it comes to gatherings and family meetups, I honestly prepped myself before going to the fray and meeting my aunts again for the holidays and whatnot. I definitely know they're gonna either comment on my weight or ask if I have a boyfriend. Those are like the two things they always ask, and we all know this. So those few minutes are always the most crucial, the most brutal and awkward and annoying. But after that, you know, everything's good. They love me, I love them. It's not like they're the thinnest people as well. They eat a lot. We love a good celebration. Everything is forgotten and we just all eat up whatever is on the table because there's usually a lot of food. Both sides of my family love a good celebration. So after that initial meet up stage again, it's pretty chill and fun to be around family. So overall, weight wasn't really a big issue on them. They didn't really force me to do anything. They would just comment because they're family. They apparently have the right to do so and whatever. And they're just more open to telling me as it is compared to other people, regardless of how it might affect me inside. And for the last one, myself. I've always been pretty confident in my own skin and my own body, but I think there had been a big chunk of me that was, well, chunky and the other part was just disconnected to myself or to my identity in a way. My size didn't hold me down, but it definitely held me back in doing a lot of things that I could have done if I was smaller or thinner. There were a lot of things I denied myself from knowing. I wasn't listening to my own body and its needs, just to assuage my ego, and because I simply didn't want to do the work in order to repair it. I wasn't proud with how I look, and because of that, I just kept on gaining and gaining until it went out of control. I can say I was definitely still happy when I was fat, but I just wasn't proud with how I looked because I know deep down I wasn't truly working on myself because I wasn't listening to my own problems or trying to solve them. There was that disconnect, and it wasn't until recently that I really delved into myself, looked through those problems, tried to analyze and solve them, and finally did the work to make me better. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and just overall. And in the end, I've actually never felt more empowered. My relationships when I was fat was generally normal. There were mean comments here and there, but regardless, we all get that no matter if we're fat, thin, male, female, and all that. Despite being treated relatively fairly, the greatest relationship I had to repair was with my own self. Sure, others could live with how I looked, but I think there was a part of me that really couldn't live with how I saw myself in the mirror every day, and I really wanted myself to change for the better. I knew it deep down, I just didn't want to do it. Thus, after much time and much self-discernment, I worked hard and I pushed through and got to where I am today. Losing the weight and confronting my mental and emotional hurdles opened the door to get closer to my real self, to my real goals, and what I really want to do with my life. In a lot of ways, it really changed how I see life and view life now, and it made me never want to close that door again. How others would now see me is just the cherry on top of the cake. I want to progress in this journey in creating a better and more nurturing relationship with myself, and in time also build more beautiful and meaningful relationships with others. That's it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. If you like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell for new videos, and do share your stories. What were your relationships like when you're in the fat body compared to a thin body and all that? And let's start a conversation. Thank you so much guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Babush!